I'm Victoria Mitchell, 34 years old. 3 days ago, my sister sent me a video by mistake, a recording of my family at dinner, calling me a useless freeloader who would never amount to anything. The irony? I'd been secretly paying their mortgage, medical bills, and business loans for 5 years. They had no idea their disappointment of a daughter was keeping them afloat financially. I said nothing when I saw that video. I didn't confront them. I didn't defend myself. I simply waited. Because in 2 days, they would all gather at the Ritz-Carlton for my sister Sophie's promotion party, an event celebrating her success in front of 200 guests. What they didn't know was that the $500,000 platinum sponsorship making that lavish celebration possible came from my company. And when the truth came out, everything changed. Before we dive into what happened at that party, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your location and local time in the comments below. Let me take you back to where this all began. My family never really saw me. While Sophie commanded attention with her vibrant personality and constant achievements, I worked quietly from my home office, building something they couldn't understand. To them, working from home meant not really working. Every Sunday dinner followed the same script. Mom would fuss over Sophie's latest marketing campaign, while Dad analyzed her career trajectory like a proud CEO reviewing quarterly reports. When they finally turned to me, the questions came wrapped in barely concealed disappointment. Victoria, when are you going to get a real office job? Mom asked last month, passing the mashed potatoes. Sophie's company has such a beautiful building downtown. I have an office, I said quietly. Your bedroom doesn't count, sweetheart, Dad chuckled. Sophie just landed 3 major clients. You should ask her for tips on networking. Sophie beamed across the table. I could introduce you to some people, Vic. Entry-level positions, but still, better than whatever you're doing now. What I was doing was running a financial consulting firm with 42 employees and managing portfolios worth 8 figures. But they didn't know that. I'd learned years ago that my achievements became invisible the moment Sophie entered the room. So I stopped sharing them. Victoria, you should learn from Sophie about real ambition, Mom said, her voice gentle but cutting. She's going places. I nodded, taking another sip of wine. Through the dining room window, I could see my Tesla in the driveway, the one they assumed was a rental whenever I visited. They never asked the right questions, and I stopped volunteering answers. The truly absurd part? My office wasn't in my bedroom. It occupied the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise. But why correct them when they'd already decided who I was? The pattern started early and never changed. When I graduated summa cum laude with my MBA from Wharton, my parents couldn't make it. Sophie had a regional presentation that same weekend. We'll celebrate when you get back, Mom promised. We never did. But when Sophie finished her bachelor's degree from state school, Dad rented out an entire restaurant. 50 guests, champagne toasts, a 3-tier cake. Our little genius, he called her, voice thick with pride. I remember sitting in that restaurant, watching them glow as Sophie talked about her entry-level marketing job. Earlier that day, I'd received my first major promotion, youngest senior analyst in my firm's history. When I mentioned it during dessert, Dad patted my shoulder absently. That's nice, honey, but don't get too comfortable. It's probably just luck. 3 months later, Sophie got promoted to marketing coordinator. Mom called everyone we knew. She's exceptional, she told her book club, her hairdresser, the grocery store clerk. Management material. Meanwhile, I was quietly managing million-dollar portfolios, but to them, I was just Victoria who works from home doing something with computers. The comparisons never stopped. Sophie's apartment was sophisticated urban living. Mine was isolating yourself from the world. Sophie's networking events were building a future. My business dinners were wasting money trying to impress people. I kept every dismissive comment locked away, thinking maybe one day they'd see me differently. Maybe one day I'd matter as much as Sophie. Then came the video that changed everything. Sophie meant to send it to her best friend. I could tell from her message that followed seconds later. Wrong chat, delete that. But I'd already watched my family laughing about their failed daughter while eating the dinner my money had paid for. The video arrived at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in my actual office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, reviewing acquisition proposals when Sophie's name popped up on my phone. The 20-second clip showed them at dinner, the camera propped against Mom's purse. Sophie must have been recording one of her day-in-the-life videos she loved posting on social media. At least we have one successful daughter, Dad said, raising his wine glass to Sophie, the Merlot I'd sent them for their anniversary. Mom laughed, that tinkling sound I knew so well. Poor Victoria, still trying to find herself at 34. She'll never amount to anything like Sophie, Dad continued. Some people just don't have what it takes. Sophie's voice came from behind the camera, giggling. She probably can't even afford her rent without roommates. The family disappointment, Mom sighed dramatically. Thank God you got the ambition genes, Sophie. I set my phone down carefully on my mahogany desk, the one I'd bought after closing my first $1 million deal. Through the windows, the city sparkled below, unaware that Victoria Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Holdings International, had just been called a failure by the people she'd been supporting for half a decade. The cruel irony? I'd transferred $12,000 to their accounts that very morning. Dad's business loan payment, Mom's cardiac medication, Sophie's student loan installment. All from anonymous trusts they believed were investment returns from a fund Dad had forgotten he'd invested in years ago. Sophie's frantic follow-up text arrived. OMG, wrong person! Delete that! I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled up my banking records. $300,000 over 5 years. Every payment meticulously documented, every transfer carefully anonymized. They had no idea who was really keeping them afloat. The numbers told a story my family would never believe. I opened the spreadsheet I'd maintained since I started supporting them, a detailed record they'd never know existed. Monthly mortgage payment, $2,500. 60 payments total, $150,000. Dad's business loan when his company nearly went under, $50,000 lump sum, plus $1,000 monthly payments for 2 years. Mom's cardiac surgery and ongoing medication, $30,000 initial, then $500 monthly for prescriptions her insurance wouldn't cover. Sophie's student loans she complained about constantly, $40,000 principal, plus monthly payments of $400 I'd been covering for 3 years. Emergency dental work, car repairs, property taxes, another $30,000 scattered across 5 years. Total, $300,000. Every penny transferred through a trust fund I'd established, made to look like returns from an old investment. I'd even created fake quarterly statements, knowing Dad would never verify them. His pride wouldn't let him question good fortune. Thank God for that old investment paying out, he'd say occasionally. Smart money management from my younger days. I'd nod along, knowing he'd never invested a dime in that fund. The smart money was mine, earned through 16-hour days building my company from nothing while they assumed I was playing around on my laptop. The irony went deeper. Sophie's company, the one she was being promoted at, had been trying to get a meeting with me for 2 years. They had no idea the useless sister they mocked was the very CEO they desperately wanted as a client. My phone buzzed. An email from my CFO, Marcus. Board approved the $500,000 sponsorship for the Morrison Industries promotion event. They specifically requested anonymity until the announcement. Should be quite the reveal. Morrison Industries, Sophie's company, her promotion party. They thought the money came from an eager corporate sponsor wanting to make connections. They were about to learn exactly who had been funding their lives. If I stopped the payments now, the dominoes would fall fast. Dad's business loan had a balloon payment due in 30 days, $15,000 he didn't have. Without it, the bank would call the entire loan. His small consulting firm would collapse within weeks. Mom's cardiac medication cost $500 monthly without insurance assistance. The premium health insurance I'd been secretly paying would lapse next month. Her cardiologist already warned that skipping medication wasn't an option. Her condition was too unstable. Sophie, despite her promotion, lived paycheck to paycheck. That downtown apartment she loved? Her salary barely covered rent. Without the anonymous loan payments, she'd owe $800 monthly, money she spent on designer clothes and networking events. But if I continued, what would change? They'd keep calling me a failure while spending my money, keep dismissing my existence while I funded theirs. The email from Marcus contained another detail. Morrison Industries wants to make this their event of the year. Black tie, 200-plus guests, full media coverage. They're hoping the mystery sponsor reveal will generate buzz. Sophie's promotion to regional marketing director, a position I knew she'd earned through genuine talent, despite everything, would be celebrated in grand style. My $500,000 would ensure that. I could have canceled the sponsorship. One phone call to Marcus, and the money would disappear. Sophie's big night would become a modest office party with grocery store cake and boxed wine, but that wasn't the lesson they needed to learn. Keep my name off everything until the announcement, I'd told Marcus in our board meeting. I want complete anonymity until the moment of reveal. He'd raised an eyebrow. This could be seen as a conflict of interest, given your family connection. The contract is ironclad, I replied, but they won't know until the moment requires it. The party was in 48 hours. The board meeting had been interesting. 12 executives around a marble table reviewing my sponsorship proposal with calculating eyes. $500,000 for a single event? Asked Jennifer, our VP of Finance. That's substantial, even for us. Morrison Industries has been courting us for 2 years, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. This gives us access to their entire C-suite in one evening. Marcus studied the contract, his lawyer's mind catching every detail. There's an unusual clause here, absolute anonymity until the moment of public announcement. That's non-negotiable, I said. David from legal frowned. Victoria, is there something we should know? Morrison Industries employs your sister, doesn't it? The room grew quiet. Everyone knew I kept family and business separate. It was one of my rules. Sophie works there, yes, in marketing. I met each of their eyes steadily. Which is why the anonymity clause is essential. This sponsorship stands on its business merit alone. The reveal will happen during the event, publicly, with full transparency. And if they react poorly? Jennifer asked delicately. Then they'll do so in front of 200 witnesses, including every major player in their industry. I smiled slightly. The contract includes specific performance clauses. Once signed, they can't back out without returning the full amount, plus penalties. Marcus set down the contract. You've thought this through. I always do. The vote was unanimous. As they filed out, Marcus lingered. This is about more than business, isn't it? I gathered my papers. Everything I do is business, Marcus. And the fact that your family has no idea who you really are? They're about to find out. He studied me for a long moment. The contract is ironclad, but they won't know until it's too late to change anything. Exactly as I'd planned. The invitation arrived by courier the next morning, an elaborate black envelope with gold embossing, celebrating Sophie's success, an evening of excellence at the Ritz-Carlton Grand Ballroom. The pretentiousness made me smile. Sophie had definitely written this herself. Inside, cream cardstock detailed the evening. Cocktails at 7, dinner at 8, special announcements at 9. The dress code, formal evening wear, was underlined twice. They knew I typically wore simple business attire. This was their way of hoping I'd feel out of place. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Got your invitation? I know fancy events aren't really your thing, but it would mean a lot if you came. Then, immediately after. If you need to borrow something to wear, I have dresses. The condescension was so natural she probably didn't realize she was doing it. I texted back, I'll be there. Really? Will you even come? Her disbelief was palpable through the screen. Wouldn't miss it. Three dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response. Okay, try to arrive on time, and maybe don't mention your work from home thing to my colleagues. I set the phone down and walked to my closet. Past the designer suits I wore to board meetings, past the gowns from charity galas where I was the primary donor, to a simple black dress in the back. Elegant, but understated. The kind of outfit that whispered rather than shouted. They expected me to either not show up or arrive looking out of place. Instead, I would blend into the background, invisible as always, until the moment required otherwise. Marcus texted, "Venue confirmed. Morrison's event coordinator has no idea who the sponsor is. They're planning a grand reveal at 9 p.m. sharp." I smiled, running my finger along the dress's fabric. I wore my simplest black dress. I would tell this story later. But first, I had a party to attend. I arrived at the Ritz-Carlton at 7:15, deliberately early. The grand ballroom was already buzzing with Sophie's colleagues, clients, and what looked like half of Morrison Industries' payroll. 200 people at least, all here to celebrate my sister's ascent. The seating chart, displayed on an elaborate easel, told me everything. Sophie at the head table with executives, my parents at table 2 with important clients, and me, table 12, in the back corner, with miscellaneous guests. Victoria! Mom appeared in a sequined gown that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her eyes swept my simple black dress with barely concealed disappointment. "You could have made more of an effort." "You look lovely, Mom," she sighed. "Well, at least you came. Try to mingle, won't you? Sophie's colleagues are very successful. You might learn something." Dad joined us, his tuxedo impeccable. He was already working the room with his eyes, identifying potential connections. "Victoria." A brief nod, then to a passing executive. "Robert Mitchell. My daughter Sophie is the woman of the hour." No mention of his other daughter standing right there. I made my way to table 12, passing conversations about quarterly projections and market expansions. Several faces looked familiar, clients of mine, though they knew me only through video calls and emails. "Sophie's amazing," someone gushed nearby. "Youngest regional director in company history." "She bought her own success," another agreed. "Unlike some people who just coast through life." They weren't even trying to be subtle. 3 tables away, my parents held court, Dad's voice carrying, "One successful daughter out of 2 isn't bad odds." The crowd laughed politely. A few glanced my way with sympathy or curiosity. I sat at my assigned seat, sipping champagne that my sponsorship had paid for, counting down the minutes until 9 o'clock. At 8:30, Sophie took the stage for her first speech. She glowed under the spotlights, confident and polished in a red designer gown that probably cost 3 months of the rent she claimed she could barely afford. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice carrying perfectly through the sound system my money had rented. "Success doesn't happen in isolation. It takes hard work, dedication, and most importantly, the right genes." Laughter rippled through the crowd. She winked at our parents' table. "I'm grateful to my parents for passing down their ambition and drive. Not everyone in the family inherited those traits equally." Her eyes found me briefly. "But that just makes me more appreciative of what I've been given." Mom dabbed at her eyes theatrically. Dad stood to raise his champagne. "To Sophie, proof that Mitchell genes can create excellence." "Though not consistently," someone at their table added, earning another round of laughter. I remained still, expression neutral, champagne untouched. A woman at my table leaned over. "You're Sophie's sister? You must be so proud." "Very," I replied quietly. Sophie continued her speech about overcoming obstacles, breaking barriers, seizing opportunities. "Some people wait for success to find them," she said pointedly. "Others of us go out and create it." The MC appeared at the side of the stage, checking his watch. He whispered something to Sophie. Her expression flickered, confusion, maybe concern, before she recovered her smile. "Before I continue, I believe we have a special announcement coming." The MC nodded, taking the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few moments, we'll be revealing the identity of tonight's extremely generous sponsor. Sophie's smile tightened. She'd expected a small company, someone eager to curry favor. The anticipation in the room shifted, became electric. The announcement was coming. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. I'm curious, what would you do? Would you continue hiding your success to keep the peace? Or would you finally reveal the truth? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you're finding value in this story, please hit that subscribe button. Trust me, what happens in the next few minutes changed everything about my family dynamic forever. The reveal is coming, and it's worth the wait. Now, let me tell you about those final moments before everything shifted. The massive LED screens flanking the stage began cycling through sponsor logos: bronze level, silver, gold. Each company name earned polite applause, but the platinum sponsor slot remained mysteriously blank, just displaying announcement at 9 o'clock p.m. Sophie kept checking her phone, her practiced composure cracking slightly. She whispered urgently to Morrison Industries' CEO, who shrugged. Nobody knew who'd written the massive check that made this lavish evening possible. The sponsor insisted on complete anonymity until tonight, the MC explained to the curious crowd. All we know is that they wanted to make this reveal memorable. I noticed Marcus had arrived, positioning himself near the AV control booth. He caught my eye and nodded slightly. Everything was in place. Mom leaned over to her table mate, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Sophie's networking skills are incredible. She probably secured this sponsor herself. That's our daughter, Dad added proudly. She understands how success works. It's all about who you know. The irony was perfect. They were right about one thing. It was definitely about who you know. They just didn't know who they knew. At 8:55, the MC returned to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before our grand reveal, I should mention that tonight's platinum sponsor specifically requested that their identity remain secret until this moment. They wanted to ensure the focus stayed on celebrating Sophie Mitchell's achievement. Sophie's shoulders relaxed slightly. That sounded gracious, supportive. She probably imagined some tech startup trying to make a splash, maybe a company hoping to poach her. The screens went dark. A countdown appeared. 5 o'clock, 4:59, 4:58. This is exciting, someone murmured. My phone vibrated. Marcus. Legal team confirms all contracts are binding. No backing out now. I set my phone face down and watched my family. They had no idea their world was about to shift. 300, 259, 258. As the countdown continued, Dad had cornered a potential investor near the bar, gesturing grandly. Sophie's promotion is just the beginning. She's got that special something. Reminds me of myself at her age. The man nodded politely. And your other daughter? Someone mentioned you have two? Dad's expression dimmed. Victoria's here somewhere. She's still finding her path. At 34? The investor looked surprised. Some people are late bloomers, Dad said with false charity. We can't all be Sophies. But hey, Victoria tries. That's what matters, right? Near the stage, Mom held court with her friends from the country club. Sophie's always been our star. Even as a child, you could tell she was destined for greatness. What does Victoria do? Someone asked. Mom waved vaguely. Something with computers, work from home situation. We don't really understand it, but we're supportive. Her tone suggested otherwise. 1:30, 1:29, 1:28. Sophie stood ready at the podium, her acceptance speech for the sponsor's acknowledgement probably rehearsed. She'd posted earlier on social media, big surprises tonight. Success recognizes success. She had no idea how right she was. The Morrison Industries executives huddled near the stage, equally curious. Their events coordinator kept refreshing her tablet, trying to access the sponsor information. The legal department had handled everything directly, bypassing the usual channels 045, 044, 043. Some people are born for success, I heard Sophie tell a reporter who'd arrived to cover the event. Others just exist. But every family needs both types, right? It makes the successful ones shine brighter. The reporter nodded, recording every word. 015, 014, 013. Marcus moved closer to the stage, his phone ready to document everything. The room fell silent as the countdown hit single digits. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. At 8:58, I decided to give my family one last chance. I walked over to Sophie, who was touching up her lipstick using her phone camera. Sophie, congratulations again. She glanced up, impatience flickering across her features. Thanks, Vic. Enjoying yourself? I know these events aren't really your scene. I'm proud of you, I said sincerely. You've worked hard for this. She laughed, that tinkling sound just like Mom's. Maybe you'll get promoted someday too. I mean, you'd need an actual job first, but still. I have a job, Sophie. Right. Your little computer thing. She turned back to her phone. Look, some of us are built for success. Others aren't. No shame in being average, Vic. I studied my sister. Beautiful, talented, cruel without even realizing it. What if I told you I wasn't average? I'd say you're delusional. She snapped her compact shut. Seriously, Victoria, stop trying to compete with me. It's embarrassing. Just accept who you are. The family's sweet little failure. If you work really hard, maybe you'll amount to something by 40. And if I already have? She actually laughed out loud. You? Please. Save the fantasies for your diary. The MC's voice boomed across the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screens. Sophie pushed past me, eager to claim her moment in the spotlight. Watch and learn, sis. This is what real success looks like. I returned to my table, pulling out my phone to record what came next. The screens flickered to life, the Platinum sponsor logo beginning to materialize. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announced dramatically, please welcome representatives from tonight's Platinum sponsor. The room held its breath. Sophie stood ready, her smile camera perfect. Then the name appeared. Before the reveal, Dad had decided to make an impromptu toast. He commandeered the microphone from the MC, champagne glass raised high. If I may, before we meet our mysterious benefactor, I want to say something about success. The crowd turned to him, Sophie beaming from the stage. Success isn't just about hard work, Dad continued, his voice carrying that CEO tone he'd perfected over the years. It's about genetics, breeding, the right combination of nature and nurture. Mom nodded approvingly from her table. Sophie represents everything the Mitchell family stands for: ambition, drive, excellence. She's proof that good genes will always shine through. He paused dramatically. Of course, not everyone in the family inherited these gifts equally. Several people glanced my way. I remained perfectly still. But that's okay, Dad continued with false magnanimity. Some trees bear fruit, others just provide shade. We love all our children, even the ones who don't quite measure up. Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the room. A few of Sophie's colleagues looked embarrassed. One woman at my table whispered, "That's cruel." To Sophie, Dad raised his glass. The Mitchell who makes us proud. Everyone drank except me. I watched my father hand back the microphone, clapping himself on the back for his honesty. The MC looked uncomfortable, but professional. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. 3 people in the crowd, clients of mine, had recognized me despite my low profile. They watched with growing interest, probably wondering why Victoria Mitchell, the CEO they'd been working with, was sitting in the back corner being publicly humiliated. One of them started recording on his phone. Sophie took her position center stage, ready to graciously accept the sponsor's acknowledgement. The screens began their final transition. Sophie claimed the microphone for her moment of anticipated glory. The spotlight followed her as she moved to center stage, red dress catching the light like flames. Before we reveal our generous sponsor, she began, I want to share something about success. The screens behind her continued loading, a progress bar at 90%. I've been blessed with mentors, an incredible team, and yes, the right family genes. She smiled at our parents. But success is also about proving doubters wrong. She paused for effect. Some people in my life never believed I'd make it this far. They thought their low expectations would hold me back. Well, to those people, her eyes found me. I want to say thank you. You motivated me to reach heights you'll never achieve. 95% loaded. Special thanks to those who thought they were better than me, who looked down on my state school degree, who whispered behind my back. She was looking directly at me now, though the audience probably thought she meant competitors. You know who you are. Your jealousy only made me stronger. Mom wiped away a proud tear. Dad nodded approvingly. And to my family, thank you for always knowing which daughter would make you proud. 98% loaded. She raised her champagne glass. Here's to proving that success isn't about hiding in the shadows or working alone in some apartment. It's about being visible, memorable, undeniable. 99% loaded. So whoever our mystery sponsor is, thank you for recognizing real talent, real achievement, real success. The MC stepped forward, card in hand. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment of revelation. Our $500,000 platinum sponsor is... The screens flashed white, then black. Then the logo appeared. Mitchell Holdings International. Beneath it, in bold letters, CEO and founder Victoria Mitchell. Complete silence. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then the screens transitioned to a full corporate presentation. My professional headshot appeared, the one from the Forbes 40 Under 40 feature. Beneath it scrolled my credentials. Wharton MBA, founded Mitchell Holdings at 28, current valuation $50 million, managing portfolios for Fortune 500 clients. Sophie's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the stage. The MC, recovering his professionalism, continued reading from his card. Mitchell Holdings International, one of the fastest-growing financial consulting firms in the country, has generously provided tonight's platinum sponsorship. Their CEO, Victoria Mitchell, wishes to say a few words. Every head in the room swiveled toward table 12. I stood slowly, smoothing my simple black dress. 200 faces stared at me, some in shock, others in recognition, many in disbelief. That's the Victoria Mitchell? I heard someone whisper. We've been trying to get a meeting with her for months. Dad had gone pale, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Sophie remained on stage, surrounded by glittering shards of glass, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. The Morrison Industries CEO stepped forward, eyes wide. Ms. Mitchell? Victoria Mitchell? You're Sophie's sister? I began walking toward the stage, my heels clicking against the marble floor in the dead silence. Each step felt like a small eternity. Marcus appeared at the AV booth, ensuring the screens now displayed a rolling presentation of Mitchell Holdings' achievements, major clients, featured articles, industry awards. The CEO wishes to say a few words, the MC repeated, his voice cracking slightly as he processed what was happening. I climbed the stairs to the stage, passing my frozen sister. The microphone waited. Good evening. I'm Victoria Mitchell. My voice rang clear through the ballroom sound system. The screens behind me continued their presentation. Forbes features, Bloomberg mentions, a list of blue-chip clients. Sophie stood frozen 3 feet away, her face a masterpiece of shock. The shattered champagne glass glittered around her designer heels like scattered diamonds. Congratulations, Sophie, on your well-deserved promotion to Regional Marketing Director. My professional headshot remained on screen. The same face they'd dismissed an hour ago, now attached to credentials they couldn't ignore. Someone in the crowd whispered loudly, Mitchell Holdings manages our pension fund. They handle 50 million in assets. Dad's investor friend from the bar stared at him. Your other daughter is that Victoria Mitchell? Why didn't you say anything? But Dad couldn't speak. His face had gone from pale to red to a concerning purple. Success should always be celebrated, I continued, maintaining perfect composure. That's why Mitchell Holdings was happy to sponsor tonight's event. The Morrison Industries CEO had moved to the front of the stage, his expression suggesting rapid mental recalculations. His company had been pursuing Mitchell Holdings as a client for 2 years. He'd had no idea the CEO was in his building, at his event, being seated at the worst table in the room. Forbes 40 under 40, someone read from their phone. Youngest female CEO to manage a 50 million portfolio. Mom finally found her voice, a strangled, Victoria? I didn't look at her. Not yet. Mitchell Holdings believes in supporting excellence wherever we find it. We sponsor based purely on merit, not connections. Sophie's boss approached the stage, his face pale. He'd just realized he'd been trying to recruit someone whose sister could buy his entire department. The silence was so complete, I could hear someone's phone vibrating 3 tables away. I walked to the podium with measured steps, passing Sophie, who remained frozen in place. The sound of my heels on the stage echoed through the silent ballroom. As I moved, faces in the crowd began registering recognition. Several clients I'd worked with remotely stood up, their expressions shifting from confusion to respect. That's her, Jennifer Chen from Maxim Industries whispered to her colleague. She restructured our entire portfolio, saved us millions. Victoria Mitchell? Robert Hayes from the bar stood up straighter. She's the one who wouldn't take our meeting. We offered her triple rates. The walk felt both endless and instant. I passed Sophie, whose face had gone from red to white to an interesting shade of green. Her carefully styled hair was starting to wilt under the hot stage lights. Ms. Mitchell? The Morrison Industries CEO stepped forward, hand extended. I had no idea you were... We've been trying to schedule a meeting with you for 2 years. I shook his hand briefly, professionally. Tonight isn't about business. It's about celebrating Sophie. But the crowd wasn't listening to my words anymore. They were reading their phones, pulling up articles, whispering frantically. She turned down Goldman Sachs, someone read aloud. Started her own firm instead. Her client list is insane. Amazon, Microsoft, Tesla, Soft. My parents had pushed through the crowd to the stage's edge. Dad's mouth worked soundlessly, trying to process how his disappointment daughter was standing where Sophie should be, commanding the attention of people he'd spent all evening trying to impress. Mom gripped Dad's arm so tightly her knuckles went white. How did we not know? Because you never asked the right questions, I thought, but didn't say. I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone, the small gesture somehow commanding absolute attention. Good evening, I repeated, my voice steady and professional. I'm Victoria Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Holdings International. The screens behind me displayed our company logo. Clean, powerful, unmistakable. First, let me congratulate Sophie on her promotion to Regional Marketing Director. It's a significant achievement earned through her own hard work and talent. Sophie's face crumpled slightly at the unexpected grace. Mitchell Holdings believes in celebrating success in all its forms. When we learned about tonight's event, we saw an opportunity to support excellence. I paused, letting my words settle. Our sponsorship wasn't about family connections. In fact, the contract was signed through blind channels. Morrison Industries didn't know the sponsor's identity, and we didn't reveal it, until now. The Morrison Industries legal team exchanged glances. They'd wondered why the sponsor insisted on such unusual terms. We believe success should stand on its own merit. Sophie earned her position without knowing about this sponsorship. That's real achievement. My eyes found my parents in the crowd. True success doesn't need to diminish others to shine. It doesn't require comparisons or cruel words. Success speaks for itself. Dad's face had gone from purple to gray. Mitchell Holdings has one more announcement tonight. I nodded to Marcus, who clicked his remote. The screens changed to show financial records, carefully redacted but clearly official. For the past 5 years, Mitchell Holdings has, through various trusts and anonymous channels, provided financial support to several individuals in this room. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Effective immediately, as part of our corporate restructuring, these anonymous support programs will be concluding. We believe it's time for everyone to stand on their own merits. Sophie grabbed the edge of the podium for support. After all, I said, looking directly at my family, that's what success is really about. This was the moment everything shifted. But I need to know, would you have exposed everything or kept it professional? What would you have said standing on that stage? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you've ever had your own moment of vindication, when the truth finally came out, I want to hear about it. Share your story with our community. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that button and the bell icon, because the aftermath of this revelation was even more powerful than the moment itself. Let me tell you what happened next. The moment I stepped off the stage, the room erupted. Sophie's boss, David Morrison himself, intercepted me immediately. Ms. Mitchell, I apologize for any misunderstanding. We had no idea you were... Can we schedule a meeting? This week? Tomorrow? Contact my office, I said politely, moving past him. 3 investors materialized in my path. Victoria, we've been trying to reach Mitchell Holdings for months. Our emails weren't returned. We're very selective with our clients. I kept walking. Behind me, I heard Sophie's voice crack. This isn't possible. She works from home. She's nobody. But the crowd wasn't listening to her anymore. They'd formed a wall between me and my parents, who were pushing desperately through the throng. Ms. Mitchell, Jennifer Chen from Maxim, you restructured our portfolio last year. Robert Hayes, Bar Capital. We'd love to discuss... Victoria! Mom's voice, shrill and desperate, cut through the professional voices. Victoria, we need to talk. I paused, turned slightly. I'm here in a professional capacity, Mrs. Mitchell. The formal address hit her like a slap. Dad finally found his voice. You're our daughter. Tonight, I'm the event sponsor. I pulled out my business cards, the ones I'd never shown them, and handed them to the interested parties. Please contact my assistant to schedule meetings. Marcus appeared at my elbow with perfect timing. Ms. Mitchell, you have that 9:30 conference call with Tokyo. I didn't, but I appreciated the exit strategy. Of course. I looked back at the stage where Sophie stood alone, abandoned by the crowd that had been celebrating her moments ago. Congratulations again on your promotion, Sophie. Then I walked toward the exit, the crowd parting like the Red Sea, leaving my family standing in the ruins of their assumptions. Marcus had one more card to play. As I reached the ballroom doors, he returned to the stage with a folder in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, one final announcement as per our sponsorship agreement. The crowd turned back, my family frozen in place. Mitchell Holdings believes in transparency. As part of tonight's sponsorship, we're required to disclose certain financial relationships. He opened the folder with theatrical precision. Over the past 5 years, Mitchell Holdings, through various anonymous trusts, has provided financial support totaling $300,000 to the Mitchell family. The screens displayed redacted but official documents, loan payments, medical bills, mortgage statements. This includes monthly mortgage payments of $10,500, medical expenses totaling $30,000, business loan support of $50,000, and educational loan payments of $40,000. Dad's investor friend stepped away from him, reassessing everything. As of tonight, per the terms of our corporate restructuring, these anonymous support programs will cease. All parties have been notified through official channels and have 30 days to make alternative arrangements. Mom swayed on her feet. Sophie gripped the podium like a lifeline. The full documentation has been notarized and filed with appropriate authorities. Mitchell Holdings wishes everyone the best in their future endeavors. Marcus closed the folder with a snap that echoed through the silent ballroom. That concludes the sponsor's announcements. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. He walked off the stage, leaving chaos in his wake. The math was simple and brutal. My family had been living on my money while calling me a failure. $300,000, someone whispered. She gave them $300,000 while they... The sentence didn't need finishing. Everyone had heard Dad's toast, Sophie's speech, the casual cruelty they'd dispensed while spending my money. Enjoy your evening, everyone. I delivered the words with perfect professional calm, then resumed my walk toward the exit. My security team, yes, I had security, another thing my family never knew, materialized from their discreet positions. Victoria, wait! Sophie's heels clattered on the marble as she ran after me, nearly slipping in her haste. This is insane, you can't just... Can't just what? I paused without turning. Stop paying your bills? Stop being your anonymous benefactor while you call me a failure? But I didn't know. Would it have mattered? Now I did turn, meeting her eyes steadily. If you'd known the money came from me, would you have treated me differently? Or would you have just been more careful about where you said those things? Her mouth opened and closed, no words coming. Contact my office if you need to discuss the transition period. You have 30 days. 30 days? Victoria, my student loans alone are $800 a month, I know. I've been paying them for 3 years. I pulled out my phone, showing her the calculation. That's $28,800 you've saved while buying designer dresses and calling me an embarrassment. Behind her, our parents had finally pushed through the crowd. Dad's face was purple again. You orchestrated this whole thing to humiliate us. No, I said simply. I sponsored my sister's promotion party. The contract was signed through blind channels, completely legitimate. The invoice will be sent Monday. Invoice? Mom's voice cracked. $500,000. Standard payment terms. Net 30. I nodded to my security team. I have a conference call to make. They formed a subtle barrier as I walked to the exit, my simple black dress a stark contrast to the glittering chaos I left behind. By the time I reached my car, my phone had exploded with notifications. 47 missed calls in 10 minutes, all from family. Mom, how could you do this to us? Dad, this is betrayal, Victoria. Sophie, we need to talk now. Mom, your father's loan payment is due. Sophie, you can't just cut us off. Dad, family doesn't do this to family. I sat in the back of my Tesla, watching the messages pile up. Each one more desperate, more angry, more revelatory than the last. Marcus called from inside. The fallout is spectacular. Sophie's trying to convince people it's a prank. Your dad is telling everyone you stole the money from them to build your company. And Mom? Crying to anyone who'll listen about ungrateful children. I pulled up my banking app, looking at the scheduled payments I'd need to cancel. Dad's business loan payment, $15,000 due in 30 days. Without it, the bank would call the entire loan. His small consulting firm, already struggling, wouldn't survive. Mom's premium health insurance, $1,200 monthly, would lapse next month. Her cardiac medication, without insurance, would cost her $500 monthly she didn't have. Sophie, despite her promotion, had built a lifestyle around my invisible support. That downtown apartment, the designer wardrobe, the networking events, she'd been living far beyond her means. They're saying you betrayed your family, Marcus reported. I paid their bills while they called me worthless, I replied. The only betrayal was theirs. Another text from Sophie. How could you embarrass us like this? I almost laughed. They'd embarrassed me for years, publicly, cruelly, consistently. But one moment of truth, and suddenly I was the villain. Your dad's approaching security, Marcus warned. He's demanding to see you. Drive, I told my driver. We pulled away from the Ritz-Carlton, leaving my family to face reality for the first time in 5 years. The professional aftermath was immediate and overwhelming. By Monday morning, my office had received 17 meeting requests from people who'd attended the party. 3 were from Morrison Industries alone, including David Morrison himself. Your reveal was the talk of the industry, my assistant informed me. Bloomberg wants a statement about the sponsorship. The financial press had picked up the story. Mystery CEO reveals identity at sister's corporate event. The angle was purely business, how Mitchell Holdings had stayed under the radar while managing major portfolios. Our stock price jumped 3% on Monday alone. The board was ecstatic. Brilliant marketing, Jennifer said in our morning meeting. The mystery, the reveal, the timing, everyone's talking about Mitchell Holdings. 3 major clients from the party signed contracts that week. Combined value, $12 million in managed assets. Sophie Mitchell's company wants to discuss a partnership, my assistant announced Wednesday. Route it through normal channels, I replied. No special treatment. The industry newsletter featured the event. Mitchell Holdings makes bold entrance into corporate sponsorship arena. They called it masterfully orchestrated and professionally devastating. But the real vindication came Thursday afternoon. Robert Hayes from Bar Capital, the man Dad had been desperately trying to impress, signed with us. I was at the party, he said simply. Anyone who can maintain that level of professionalism under those circumstances is someone I want managing my money. Sophie's company did reach out formally. They wanted Mitchell Holdings to manage their pension fund. The irony was delicious. They needed us far more than we needed them. Your sister is in the lobby, my assistant informed me Friday afternoon. She doesn't have an appointment. I looked at my calendar, packed with meetings from companies that suddenly knew Victoria Mitchell existed. She can wait, I said. I have real work to do. Sophie waited 3 hours. When I finally agreed to see her, she looked different. Designer dress wrinkled, makeup smudged, the confidence gone. Your office is incredible, she said quietly, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the original artwork, the wall of accolades I'd never shown family. You have 5 minutes. She flinched but pulled out her phone, showing me the video that started everything. I'm sorry about this, about what we said. You're sorry you got caught saying it. That's not... She stopped, reconsidered. Maybe, yes. But Victoria, I genuinely didn't know about any of this. She gestured around the office. How could you keep this from us? I tried to tell you multiple times. You all assumed I was lying or exaggerating. But $300,000? That you spent while calling me a freeloader. She pulled out a folder. Loan statements, bills, calculations. I can't make these payments. Even with my promotion, I can't afford the lifestyle you built on my money? I leaned back in my chair. That's called consequences, Sophie. But we're family. Were we family when Dad toasted to having one successful daughter? When Mom said I'd never amount to anything? When you told me to accept being the family's sweet little failure? Each quote hit her like a physical blow. Would it have mattered? I asked. If you'd known about my success, would you have loved me more, respected me? Or would you have just been more careful about the insults? She stared at her hands. I don't know. It was the first honest thing she'd said. I can't do this to Mom and Dad, she whispered. Dad's business will fail. Mom needs her medication. Then you'd better figure something out. You're the successful one, remember? Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out a document I'd prepared. I'll cover Mom's essential cardiac medication only. Direct payment to the pharmacy, no cash to her. That's non-negotiable. I won't let her die because of Dad's pride. Sophie's shoulders sagged with minor relief. Dad's business loan is his responsibility. He's the successful businessman, right? He can figure it out. But he'll lose everything. He should have thought of that before publicly humiliating his daughter while spending her money. I slid the document across the desk. Your student loans are yours, $800 a month. You make $70,000 now with your promotion. You can afford it if you budget. But my apartment costs $3,000 monthly, downsize. She looked at the paper, my new boundaries in black and white. Monthly family dinners? If and only if they're respectful. One comment about my little computer job or being the family disappointment, and I'm gone for good. They'll never agree to this. Then they'll never see me again. I stood, signaling the meeting's end. I spent 5 years being invisible while funding your visible success. I'm done with that dynamic. Victoria. She stood too, seeming smaller than I remembered. Were we really that cruel? I pulled up the video on my computer, played it on the large screen. Our parents' voices filled the office. Disappointment, never amount to anything, useless freeloader. Sophie flinched at each word. You tell me. She left with the document, tears streaming down her face. I felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a clean sense of finality. Love shouldn't require you to be less than you are. Respect isn't negotiable. And family doesn't entitle anyone to your sacrifice. I'd finally set the boundaries I should have established years ago. 6 months later, the landscape had completely changed. Dad sold his consulting business and took a position as a mid-level manager at a smaller firm. The humility looked strange on him, but perhaps necessary. He'd stopped mentioning his successful daughter at every opportunity. Mom worked part-time now as a receptionist at a medical office. The job provided basic health insurance, and I still covered her critical cardiac medication, the only financial link remaining between us. Sophie and I had developed something resembling a relationship. We met for lunch monthly, cautiously rebuilding on different terms. She'd downsized to a studio apartment, sold the designer wardrobe, and learned to budget. I never tell anyone you're my sister, she admitted over salad one day. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I need to earn my own reputation. Good, I said. And I meant it. She'd stopped dismissing my achievements, but more importantly, she'd stopped comparing us altogether. We were two different people on two different paths, a concept our family had never grasped before. The family dinners happened occasionally. Awkward affairs where Dad struggled not to mention money and Mom bit her tongue when tempted to compare us. But they were trying, which was more than before. I saw the Forbes article, Mom said quietly at last week's dinner. 40 under 40. That was 2 years ago, Mom. We didn't know. You didn't ask. The silence that followed was heavy but not hostile. We were learning to be family differently, without the toxic dynamics, without the financial dependencies, without the cruel comparisons. Sophie raised her water glass one evening. To Victoria, who succeeded not because of us, but despite us. It was the closest to an apology I'd ever get. It was enough. Looking back, I learned something vital about success and family. Success doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't require validation from people who refuse to see it. For 5 years, I built an empire while my family called me a failure. Their blindness didn't make my achievements less real. It just made their opinions less relevant. But disrespect? Disrespect requires boundaries. There's a difference between love and enabling. Love doesn't mean accepting cruelty. It doesn't mean funding the lifestyle of people who diminish you. Family isn't entitled to your sacrifice, especially when they can't even offer basic respect in return. I found my voice in silence first. In those years of building quietly, succeeding without fanfare, achieving without acknowledgement. The reveal at Sophie's party wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, about standing in my power after years of being told I had none. Your worth isn't determined by their recognition. It never was. Some people will only see your value when it's displayed on a screen in front of 200 witnesses. Others will never see it at all. Neither response changes who you are or what you've accomplished. I still pay for Mom's medication because keeping her alive is about my values, not hers. But I no longer pay for their lifestyle, their comfort, or their delusions about which daughter has value. The boundaries I set weren't walls. They were doors. Doors that only opened for respect, for genuine connection, for relationships that didn't require me to be less so others could feel like more. Success, I learned, isn't just about what you achieve, it's about what you refuse to accept. And I refuse to accept being invisible in my own family anymore. What boundaries do you need to set? If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by their family's recognition. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family who didn't value you? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. What was your moment of standing in your truth? Remember, success doesn't always need to be loud, but disrespect always needs boundaries. Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories about finding your power, setting healthy boundaries, and choosing yourself. What's your biggest takeaway from Victoria's story? Let me know below. Your perspective matters here.